I tried to get an Uber to the office today. Okay, I've been in my apartment the entire day. I watched the live show an hour ago. I've had no outside contact. To me, today is all about the new league year. I can't get an Uber. None to be found.
What day is it today? It's
Wednesday the 17th.
Well,
is what it is.
I was actually asking that question for a different reason other than what holiday it was. I'm thinking about how far we've gotten into the year where you've broken your New Year's resolution of trying to be more relatable to our listeners.
Okay.
I was late for an Uber to the office.
Look, people Uber all the time. Usually I ride my bike. My bike was at the office, okay? Can't find an Uber anywhere. Turns out it's St. Patrick's Day and there are drunk people everywhere. But we are going to discuss free agency. We've got a great show here. If you're joining us live, it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be with you for about 40 minutes. Topic number one that we are going to get to is the Patriots. We're going to talk about, did they screw themselves long-term with their gluttony of signings? What is their thinking, and do we get behind it? We're going to talk about the biggest draft impacts that free agency has had and look at the 49ers situation, look at the Bears with our own Bears fanatic, PFF Brad, and talk about the Seahawks a little bit, maybe a little Deshaun Watson, and then at the end, who played the cap the best and who effed themselves. So, topic numero uno. Skip and Shannon talked about it this morning. They got animated. Did the Patriots and their spending spree, did they screw themselves long term, and why or why not, Brad?
I mean, they still have the resources to do this. As we talked about all week, they've never had a roster this poor that required them to spend money. So part of the reason they weren't doing it was because they didn't need to. And they didn't screw themselves. It's just like, what is the return on these moves really going to be? They're known for not spending because they just draft and develop. And after all these moves, they still have Cam Newton at quarterback. So, where are they really going to go in an AFC East that Buffalo is clearly still the top option?
I guess. Well, not only that, Miami's made some moves that some are questionable, some were chasing last year's draft. The Justin Coleman signing, for example. But they're right on their heels, and you look at a Jets team which appears to be making a lot of good moves, the Gerard Davis signing notwithstanding, and obviously has the most weaponry to go into the draft with.
Okay, so let me recap here. Cam Newton, 1 year, $5 million. I don't think anyone has a problem with that. Okay, that might be their cheapest move so far, most important position. And it's great to see these other moves that give Cam a chance. Okay, but let's look at what they are. Jonnu Smith, 4 years, $50 million, $31 million guaranteed. That's tight end number one. They then went out and got Matthew Judon, $54 million, $32 guaranteed. Devon Godshaw, 2 years, $15 million. Okay, that's not a lot. Jalen Mills, 4 years, $24, $9 guaranteed. Nelson Aguilar, 2 years, $22 million, up to $26. Kendrick Bourne, 3 years, $15 million. Henry Anderson, 2 years, $7 million. Dietrich Wise, 4 years, $22 million. Hunter Henry, 3 years, $37 million with $25 guaranteed. Do any of these deals, I guess my first question is do any of these deals really have that long-term of an impact aside from the Jonnu Smith one?
Right, that's the thing. Yeah, the tight ends are the only truly big move where you think they're going to move the needle. They now have the co-third highest paid tight ends in the NFL. But I wrote an article about a week ago about total guarantees given out in free agency from 2016 to 2020. They were third least in the AFC. They went to 3 Super Bowls in that time, and they got the 5th most WAR in the first year of those deals in the entire AFC. So it's not necessary. It's not something they've ever done. So lauding it now almost neglects and ignores what they've done for the better part of 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, when you've had Tom Brady, the surrounding cast, the goal was to get that entire group to average, right? And then bottoming out at the draft, taking N'Keal Harry, getting tight ends that couldn't play at all last year, whiffing at, even in the secondary, not doing great. in the draft, and an O-line not doing as good as well. Like, these signings are not necessarily like impact players. They're getting Bill what he wants, which are average players. The question then becomes, can Cam Newton elevate average players around him the way that Tom Brady did? My intuition would say no, but that just requires them, after years of struggling on the draft, to finally get, like, if they lean into the next few drafts and do a great job, then this stuff doesn't look quite as bad, right? But if they continue to have issues drafting, right, then I don't think that this moves the needle much at all.
I guess that's where I struggle, because I don't. My big thing here is that does this set of moves make them any more than competitive, more so for the number 2 team in their own division? Probably not. Like, this did not make them a Super Bowl contender. Right now, if the division odds are moving significantly in favor of the Patriots, I'm laughing. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing would be, kind of to your point, Eric. They won with Tom Brady. It wasn't like they didn't have elite players around. Rob Gronkowski was elite. Julian Edelman was very, very good when he was healthy. And I like Jonnu Smith. I like Hunter Henry. But I don't feel like they've put any particularly elite players. Do you think
Belichick even thinks those guys are elite? I mean, the whole.
If Bill Belichick doesn't think Gronkowski is elite,
yeah, but Edelman, let's say, because here's the thing, because he did try to go out and get a tight end who project. Like, that's the one position where he's like, okay, I'm going to pay big dollars for these guys. My thing is when Belichick's entire career has been centered around this idea that he can take a certain caliber of player and make them as 2x that caliber of player, and he was faced with such a bad roster over the last year and a half, 2 years, that I think it's more to like satisfy him to get these players into that range and then see if he can elevate them. Like, his entire career, Richard Seymour, traded him. Jamie Collins, the first time, traded him. He tried to trade Gronk to Detroit 2 years ago. Like, there has always been this idea, and even Brady to some extent. I think keeping Brady around that long was more Belichick's sort of like, kicking and screaming, acknowledging that that's the one position where they've been elite forever. But I would be surprised if Belichick had the same view of his elite players as we do. And like somebody like Matthew Slater, like, who he thinks kind of a bum, he probably thinks that guy, like, he probably sees the thing so much differently than we do, to the point where, like, that's why he could value a Kendrick Bourne, and we're like, God, he's kind of whatever, and he might not necessarily value an Edelman as much as we would.
What is this year, their cap, it doesn't matter because Cam Newton's $5 million. And one of the things that Shannon Sharp mentioned was, okay, well, who are they going to go get in free agency anyways? Like, who's going to be a free agent that they're going to go sign? But I guess my question would be, do these moves actually, like, what does that look like next year for them? Is there any concern if someone should become free that they could go get?
They could go ahead and sign someone. I guess my concern would be, you mentioned the draft. This is their first time drafting in the top half of the first round since 2001, since they took Richard Sherman. So you have the 15th pick this year, which barely top half, but high for them. Maybe they make a move up for a quarterback, but if not, odds are you're picking at 15 or lower next year. So even if you can't sign someone, you're also precluding a trade up in the draft for the next quarterback.
I mean, yeah, that's tough, though, because you have to... And I hate to try. I'm not trying to play devil's advocate. I'm legitimately coming at this from you've re-signed Cam Newton. You're trying to build a competitive team. I think there are good players out there. 15 isn't super high. I don't know.
15 got the Washington football team, Dwayne Haskins. Like, that's that draft pick.
Congrats.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not that high, right? And the only way that they get a blue chip quarterback is if they get lucky.
Right.
Like look, think about the quarterbacks that have been picked after pick. Like, I'm obviously end pointing is a problem here, but after pick 12, the Watson pick in 17, you've gotten what? You've gotten Drew Lock, you've gotten Jordan Love, you've gotten Dwayne Haskins, Lamar Jackson's the one, right? And Lamar Jackson, obviously, there's the bias inherent in everybody wanting him to be wide receiver, et cetera. But like that, and then looking historically, that's Brady Quinn territory, that's Brandon Weeden territory, that's Johnny Manziel, Teddy Bridgewater. You're not getting a blue chip caliber quarterback past pick 10. And so is Belichick willing to trade up? There was the one rumor in 18 that he was willing to trade up for Mayfield. That's basically been the only whiff we've gotten of him being willing to do something like that.
I think, in my bones, I believe that the Patriots think you can find quarterbacks of great quality later on in the draft. I just really do.
NF1, man. NF1.
I know that Tom Brady is the one that everyone points to, but I actually think about it from a Jimmy G perspective. They love Jimmy G. They got Jimmy G for nothing. Small school guy, and was not someone that you had to reach in the high end of the first round to get. And I really think that Bill Belichick believes I can find another really good quarterback, maybe not Tom Brady, but I can find another really good quarterback outside of the first round. I think that's what he's thinking, and that he's not worried about trying to find a top 5 pick, whether we agree with that or not.
I mean, that would be, to me, honestly, that would, I think that would be absurd. I would, and looking at this draft, I know Chris was on here last week and said Davis Mills was a good prospect. I know that Kellen Mond could be, but if you're putting, those guys are surprises. Those guys are, and I'll say this, that those guys are, you take RG3 at 2, and you take Kirk Cousins in the 4th round. And if Kirk ends up being better than RG3, that's you get to count that, because that you were thoughtful. If you take Kellen Mond in round 2 and expect him to be your quarterback, like when's the last second-round quarterback that was drafted that was expected to be a starter that was good?
That's a fair point.
Derek Carr. Derek Carr is literally the last quarterback that was taken in round 2 that was started, and this isn't like back in the day. Like,
and Chicago Bears legend Andy Dalton would be the other one. And I guess
that's a long time ago. That's already almost 9 years.
Okay, so what would you have done if you were the Patriots this offseason?
I would have made a significant push to get, so I don't mind the Cam thing, but what I'm saying now is, given everything they've done, I would make a significant push to draft a quarterback in the top 5. And I probably would have, instead of spreading the risk out at the wide receiver position, I probably would have made a bigger play for one of the more expensive guys than having 2 tight ends. Because here's the thing, and I know we're friends with Warren and everything, but the 12 and 21 personnel stats are still, like, they are rife with. What's that?
Explain why.
Well, because teams run 12 personnel on early downs. Early downs, you have a credible threat of running, which means passing is going to be easier. 12 you're not, nobody, this isn't 1993. No one's running 12 and 22 personnel, 21 personnel on late downs, right? So like the 11 personnel stuff versus the 13, 12, 21 personnel stuff, it's rife
really
with
down splits.
Exactly. And not only that, but it's also rife with, like, if I'm playing 11 on early downs, I'm generally speaking, I'm playing from behind, right? Like the freedom to run those sets is contingent on being a good football team. We talked about that about Minnesota, right? When they played all those backups in 2019, they played all the good quarterbacks in 2020, how it wasn't quite as easy for them. And it's the same thing. So they can get 2 tight ends, but if it's 3rd down and 7 and they're lining up 12 personnel, and their 2 wide receivers are Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne, like, I'm sorry, the lights are out. Take
Jacoby Myers slander will not stand. Brad, what would you have done?
Yeah, so this is obviously some classic hindsight analysis, but last time there was a guy kind of in that late 5 to 10 range from the Mountain West region that couldn't really throw the ball in college, but developed. The Bills were at pick 12. Traded up to pick 7 to get Josh Allen. So Patriots in that 15 range. If a Trey Lance falls, if a Justin Fields falls, yeah, I say you go up for that guy.
Now, they can still do that. That's I think, the hidden thing here. Now, it doesn't feel like they will. I'm with you, Eric. What I would have done is I would have looked to get an explosive wide receiver. Now, they may still, nothing against Nelson Aguilar. Nelson Aguilar, not exactly an explosive wide receiver. Neither is Kendrick Bourne. The 2 tight end thing was a bit much. Paying Jonnu Smith that much money. Remember, the Tennessee Titans offense was fantastic. Tons of play action, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis. That to me was
played in an easy schedule.
A bit of an overspend there. So it was more for me about not feeling great about the players that they went in on, and everyone just assumes Bill Belichick knows what he's doing. Maybe go look at the history books and see if that's warranted or not. All right, let's move on to continue talking about the draft a little bit, and let's talk about the biggest impact that we think free agency will have on the first round. What do you think it'll be, Eric?
Oh, man, that's a really good question. I think the signings of all these edge players is going to make edge drop further in the draft than we thought, because there was a lot more affordability. So I put down my 6 favorite signings. I thought one of them was Carl Lawson to the Jets at $15 million a year. The way that everything worked out for him as far as a shorter deal, so that's good for both him and the Jets. $15 million a year is really good for the Jets, but also really good for a guy who was drafted in the 4th round. The Jets' best edge player in God knows how long. But what that means is that that's another team that doesn't need a Kwity Paye or a Gregory Rousseau. And last season, what we saw is a lot of linemen, we saw wide receivers push back a little bit. And I think the wide receiver class being sort of undervalued the first couple days, and as well as the wide receiver class in this draft being great, this means another sort of feather in the cap of the idea that some wide receivers are going to be taken higher this year.
I think the same with the tackle market as well. I mean, all these kind of veteran guys that are available. I haven't heard anything about, Riley Reif, Russell Okung. I think clearly teams agreed this is a stacked tackle class. Those guys are going to go early and often, along with wide receiver.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I had not thought about the tackles. Now you're making me second guess my take on here, which was who's buying wide receivers? No one. And you look at, we did a clubhouse on Monday, and a guy, Andre, came on and talked about how does the recent success of wide receivers in the draft have teams going, shit, why am I paying a guy when I can get him on the cheap and they're going to start playing well right off the jump? You look at DK Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, Terry McLaurin, A.J. Brown, all these guys. And I'm not sure that it means that the wide receivers go any higher, but I do think we'll see more wide receivers in the first round. That's my big, and I actually look at the Patriots and go, at 15, maybe they trade back a couple spots, still snag a explosive wide receiver if they're there. To me, that is kind of my big takeaway, and what I think will change I don't know if there's any specific team that you say, well, based on who they sign, they won't take this particular player, unless maybe you're looking at, say, the Niners, if they were thinking about getting a tackle.
What about Washington football team at 19 is I think where a lot of folks are mocking that 5th quarterback.
Oh, really? You think? I haven't seen that.
You haven't?
No,
I see Mac Jones or Trey Lance mocked there in drafts that are a little bit more.
Chris Sims has him taking Justin Fields in the 2nd round.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Just messing with you.
So, but I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick. So I think the Washington football team is going to take one of the developmental guys in round 2 or 3 or round 4. I don't think that they see their front 4, which is amazing. They got William Jackson, which was a great signing. They pair him with Landon Collins, Cameron Curl, right? They got good football players on that team. And then you look at the offensive side of the ball. Fitzmagic can do his thing in a bad division. They're already now 2nd in the division in odds, plus 300, I believe, last time I looked. I just don't think that they're going to do anything. If a quarterback falls to them at 19, maybe. But if it's sort of this margin call sort of idea. If a quarterback falls to them at 19, the whole league, including probably them, believes that quarterback isn't very good. And then we're talking about the under 4.5 quarterbacks thing. Whereas if Washington really wanted a quarterback, they'd move up. And I'd have a hard time seeing them do so after taking Fitzmagic and sort of paying Heineke what they paid him and having Kyle Allen in the fold as well.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because one of my notes for the podcast, I've been getting excited about draft or betting on division props, and I'm gonna look at what it is exactly right now. But one of my favorite team-wide uses of money this entire free agency has been the Washington football team. I love what they did. William Jackson is exactly what you want to target. A guy coming off not so great of seasons. He's still young. You put him in the right scheme. You give him what he can handle, and then he becomes an above-average cornerback for you. That's massively valuable. Ryan Fitzpatrick's graded over 75 each of the last 3 seasons. He's a good quarterback. Think about how good the Dolphins were when he was the quarterback. The Washington football team had one of the worst quarterbacking situations in history last year. Okay, Alex Smith had to come out there on 1.5 legs and lead them. You know, Taylor Heineke was a god in Washington after that game. And to me, I know this is going to sound sacrilegious. I'm not sure they're not the best team in the division.
Even with Dak back, you still think Washington football team?
They're the best overall team in the – like, look, if this was 1995 and quarterback was, as Dennis Green, the former coach of the Minnesota Vikings, once said, this is just one position of 22, then yes, the Washington football team is better than Dallas.
Let me paint you guys a picture here, okay? So on DraftKings.com, the sports book, Dallas Cowboys are plus 100. Our friends. The Washington football team is 3-1. I will be betting on the Washington football team right now. But let me take you through. Week 1 comes around. You know what every single person on the planet's watching? The Dallas Cowboys. Let's say they lose. You know what everyone's talking about? Dallas Cowboys. Washington football team doesn't matter, okay? It does not matter. No one is going to be standing at their locker room waiting to eviscerate them. The Cowboys every year have such a harder job of just playing football. They're dealing with 40 million other things. And Dak is coming back off an injury. They've got question marks across that roster. They've got question marks at defensive, all across the defense. Defensive coordinator is going to be new. I just think that the gap between Ryan Fitzpatrick and Dak Prescott is close enough that the overall abundance of good play for the Washington football team, what I think is a better coaching situation,
let's not sour on our guy Mike.
I'm not souring on Mike. I'm saying I like Ron Rivera. Riverboat Ron is with whom I stand. 3-1 is absurd.
Having a coach not have to go through chemotherapy during the season is probably a big thing. Not having a terrible quarterback situation, not playing the AFC North again, which is a damn good division in its own right. Are all reasons why I think Washington has a shot. The problem is, again, this is the same thing that always freaking happens. You have a brilliant defense, and they made plays for sure. William Jackson, you're gonna have some ascension, you'd imagine, from those younger guys in the front four. But regression's a mean lady. Okay, so that
I've never heard that before.
Regression happens, and then on that offensive side of the ball, you ask more of Ryan Fitzpatrick. And while he occasionally has risen to that challenge in his career, there are plenty of other times when he has folded. And so I can see Washington I can see them winning the division. I think 3-1's a good bet because I can't see the Giants or the Philadelphia Eagles doing it. So it really is a 2-team race. But I think when you look at how NFL games are won nowadays, having Dak Prescott versus having I'm going to bet on Dak in that division.
Go get Terry a sidekick. Pick him in the draft. Will Fuller right now is going to get signed for a bag of chips. What do you think Will Fuller's contract's going to be?
I think if he's smart, he signs in Green Bay with a quarterback for a 1 year, like $8 million base value, and just bets on himself for 1 year.
You know what reminds me of Aaron Rodgers? Ryan Fitzpatrick. No, but seriously, if there's a place like Jameis Winston, not a quarterback's going to win you a Super Bowl. However, he might get your wide receivers. You picked Chris Godwin first overall among wide receivers, and that was thanks to Jameis.
And he earned the franchise. He's a franchise player, George.
He's great. No, he's great. But my point is, if you're Will Fuller, why would you not go to Washington? You have a great sidekick in Terry McLaurin, and you have a guy that's willing to throw the ball at any time.
No, and here's the other thing. The cornerbacks in your division, aside from James Bradbury, are ass. So you're actually like, look at Dallas. Trayvon Diggs' best play in 2000.
The slump buster, baby.
Trayvon Diggs, the slump buster. His best play in 2020 was a play where he got burned by 5 yards, caught up to the guy, and punched it out of the end zone. He literally gave up a long reception on the best play of his season. Like that, yeah. I don't mind it. But look over in the North, though, if you're looking at another place for Will Fuller. Vikings corners are not very good. Chicago might cut Kyle Fuller today or next few days. And Detroit, Detroit's got a ways to go. They might bite off your kneecaps, but they're not keeping you from getting the end zone.
Let's talk Niners here. So Trent Williams, I woke up this morning, 5 a.m.
Feeling dangerous?
Yeah. I knew something was up. And Trent Williams had just signed the richest tackle deal. Break this deal down for us, Brad. It's 6 years, so it would be 38. But what is the way that the deal was constructed? Is it really a 6-year deal? What are the key numbers to take away from that?
Yeah, I would say there's no such thing as a real 6-year deal.
Yeah.
They happen. I guess Gronk is somehow made it through his full 6-year extension. But no, it's probably a 3-year deal, maybe 4 if he keeps playing well. We have seen a bunch of tackles play. I mean, Andrew Whitworth in the division is going to be 40 next year, still a good player. But $30 million signing bonus and 55 in total guarantees. It sounds like the first 3 years are actually about $20 million per, and the vast majority of the guarantees will be there. So you say 3 years, you get, 18 of that signing bonus, prorated there. And then if you do move on after 3, there's just $12 million left. So yeah, probably 3.5 year deal.
And I love it. I love it. You know what this tells me? And maybe tell me if I'm crazy here, okay? But I see this deal and I go, you know what they're getting ready to do? They're getting ready to get me a quarterback. They're getting ready to trade up, bring a
Have you already lost all faith in Deshaun Watson, the situation?
I don't know. I don't know that they're going to be the most aggressive. I think a team is going to be desperate, and I don't think John Lynch is one to be desperate.
He doesn't need to be.
No.
He's already taken the team to the Super Bowl once. He's
Kyle
got
Shanahan
a long deal.
Has some of the biggest balls in the entirety of the NFL, and I don't think that he's a guy that's going to get that duo isn't going to go, oh yeah, we're going to give every single asset we have, including Levi Stadium, for Deshaun Watson. Whereas I think there are teams that should do that.
The smock?
The smock, absolutely.
So let's circle back. Let's circle to that one because I have 6 of my least favorite signings. 2 of them play for the Carolina Panthers on the offensive line. If you're preparing yourself, prepare ye away for Deshaun Watson to come to Carolina. What in God's name are you doing signing Cam Irving and Pat Elflein to deals that involve millions of dollars?
I don't know. Does anyone feel that they're viable starters?
I mean, the Vikings had the worst grade as a unit at guard last year, and in the middle of that year, still cut Pat Elflein, a draft pick of their own, and now 6 months later, he signs a decent deal at guard.
Yeah, I mean,
so let's put some data behind this. Pat Elflein has failed to clear a 50.0 pass blocking grade in any of the past 3 seasons. And our boy Cam Irving, despite his extensive experience, his best year, 58 overall PFF grade. Those are not great.
He was a left tackle. So he was the example that all Chiefs fans thought when they win in the Super Bowl with Mike Remmers, left tackle, because Cam Irving started half the season for the Chiefs in the 19 season when they won the Super Bowl. Now they lost all 4 of the games, that they lost that year with him playing, but like he's like a backup tackle in the NFL, and I just don't. Is this backup tackle money? Like, what is Riley Reif going to go for? That's all that much more than 2 for 10. What's Riley Reif going for? 2 for 20
at this point,
at his best day?
Yeah, on his best day. At this point, that he'd be lucky to get that. Yeah.
So like, if you're Watson and you're thinking to yourself, okay, Houston, because I'll give Houston this. They went out and they paid too much, but they went out and got Laramie Tunsil to sort of help Watson out. They went out and got Kenny Stills in that same trade. Like they tried to do some of the things that I think Wilson, although Wilson's team traded for Dwayne Brown from Houston, so like it's a similar thing. But like if Watson comes to Carolina and he sees this offensive line and he's like, I'm sorry, what? Like, what are they doing?
Circle back to George's thing too, the opposite. So talking about the 49ers again, they have Trent Williams, who was the highest graded tackle in the run game. Mike McGlinchey was second, and they just signed Alex Mack a couple hours ago. If you're trying to trade it for a Trey Lance and just pound the ball,
buddy, Justin Fields
or Fields.
What do you? I mean,
baby.
I do think San Francisco is the best landing spot for 3/5 of those quarterbacks in the first round.
And there's a reason, right? I mean that scheme has the ability to turn some of them into some incredible players. I look at the Trent Williams deal, and you make a really good point, which is he's so freaking good in Kyle Shanahan's system. When you get those isolation blocks on the outside. I know we don't talk about the run game all that often, but he's one of those guys that if you're trying to have an explosive run game that gets you 20-yard chunk play gains, like that's one of the guys that can really help you with that. And I would say this as well. He took an entire year off. So 32, yeah, that's old, but he said this on the podcast with Richard and Chris. He was like, that sucked, but I felt so fresh. I feel so fresh right now. And I think there's something to that where you're probably going to get 3 years of, at the very least, top 5 tackle play. But if I'm thinking about this from the 49ers perspective, this move to me, and I know people were like, oh, does this mean they don't go up or pick a quarterback at 12 or whatever? I think it's the exact opposite. I think this move is all about saying we are trying to identify the best players we can to play football for us. And Jimmy G might get a shot still, but you can't be the Bears. This is how we'll transition. You can't be the Bears and just be satisfied with mediocre to below average, can you?
No, you're right. No, at this point, Kyle Shanahan is too good at his job. The thing with him, too, is even when the roster falls apart, he's still going to win you like 6-7 games. So you're never going to be picking probably higher than 12, most likely, with Shanahan and a competent team. So, yeah, they should be heavy, aggressive, and I think they will be.
Yeah, I love it. Because to me, if they let him go, if they let Williams walk, I would have been very worried that they were thinking of using pick 12 on a tackle. And I now look at this team and I go, the clearest big need here for them is the most important player on the field is quarterback. I'm talking myself into it, but I like it. Let's talk a little bit about the Bears. How do you feel about our Bears futures, division futures?
Wow.
What are they thinking? What are the Chicago Bears doing?
I honestly think that they believe that they can still get Wilson and that Dalton will be part of that trade.
But if you're Seattle and you could have signed the guy at any point, why is he not moving the needle for you?
If you're Seattle and you and you're connecting those dots, you would not have pissed Wilson off to begin with.
That's fair.
We're assuming rationality from these teams. We're assuming anything other than white noise in their decisions when it's not warranted for all but like 5 teams. Like, show me Buffalo's process, I'll follow it. Show me Baltimore's. Every other team, it's like, well, if this happened, this doesn't make sense with respect to this. And it's like, yeah, because they're just making every decision in this Markovian way. Like, this is our situation. This is the decision we're making. And it's like, and so I think of Seattle, like, okay, Seattle's trying to patch it up with Russ. But the very issue that caused, it's the same thing with Watson. The very issue that caused the consternation to begin with is still going to be there because they just don't view football in a winning way. And that's ultimately what Russ is pissed off about, is that he's amazing and they don't want to do what's necessary to win football games with him. So it would make a ton of sense for them to be like, well, we've tried. He just doesn't want to be a part of Seahawks Nation, and he wants to be a part of Seahawks Nation. Let's bring him in. We're getting a great deal, by the way. He's $10 million a year. That's half of what Bridgemar's making.
I told everyone this 2 weeks ago. The Bears have no mechanism to actually present the Seahawks with something that gives them a chance at a quarterback. And all these 3-team deals involving the Jets, like, good luck getting these guys all in, one Zoom call, unmuted at one time.
Can we pause for a second, though? In Pete Carroll's career in Seattle, his first year he had an old Matt Hasselbeck, and he cut him so that he could start Tavares Jackson on purpose, okay? In 2012, he signed Matt Flynn. That was supposed to be his starter. He signed Matt Flynn, and he lucked into the Jaguars taking Brian Anger, a punter, ahead of them instead of Russell Wilson. And then Russell, to their credit, played well enough where they admitted the mistake and started him over Matt Flynn. But let's not pretend that Pete Carroll is like this quarterback.
I wasn't pretending about that. I just said that there was no way.
But they don't have to be presented with a quarterback option. They don't.
Here's a question for you, though. Okay, so we know the package allegedly was 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and 2 starters, and that didn't get the deal done.
Andy Dalton is a starter for that team.
Okay, so even if we throw in Andy Dalton, which I think has 0 value, let's say they get to the draft, they can offer a 4th first-round pick. If the Chicago Bears, let's say the 2 starters are Kyle Fuller and, I don't know, Darnell Mooney, so they get another receiver in Seattle. Do you feel better about your NFC North future with the Bears, even with Russ? How much better do you feel? I mean, of course you feel better, but I'm saying, you think you're actually going to win that bet still at that point?
I don't know. Seattle's roster sucks compared without
Would it be better?
Russ in it.
Would Chicago's be better after that trade, though?
Here's a way to think about it. What would you feel? So I've been talking about the Seahawks at 3-1. That line hasn't moved, by the way. I would bet the Seahawks 3-1 to win the division because I think Russ is staying there. what would you feel? Like, how would you feel about that bet? How would you feel about the Bears?
The Bears at 5.5 to 1 is where I think it is now. Is a better bet than Seattle 3 to 1. Here's why: the NFC West is actually a good division. You're playing like good team after good team after good team, like relatively frequently. The NFC North is a Packers meltdown away from being like the AFC South.
It's
Oh,
very
bad
true.
division.
Like a very bad division. And the AFC South somehow produces 2 playoff teams every year. So every time we talk about them as a dog shit division, everybody rips on us, but they're bad. But if you go to Chicago, Detroit's not going to compete for a couple years. Minnesota's not going to compete for a couple years. And Green Bay is literally like squeezing the last bit of toothpaste out of the tube. Like that, to me, that's why I like the Chicago play, because if they get any sort of, they went 12-4 and won that division by 3.5 games like just 3 years ago. Like
The Bears, I agree with you. So here's my take on it, Brad. Those draft picks aren't going to manifest themselves. They're not going to rear their ugly head until a couple years down the road.
Sure.
And man, if they could get that, I mean, what would their cap situation be? That's my real question. Like, could they still go out and patch up? You know, a lot of these free agent wide receivers are going to be on the cheap. You know, what would they have to do cap wise to even get Wilson in there? First off, and then would they have any room left to make any other moves?
They're already in a Saints, Eagles, Falcons, Steelers-esque scenario, which is crazy when you don't have a quarterback on the roster. Again, they can do it. They would bring Russell in and immediately restructure and push money down the line, and they would just go nuts with further restructures. They already did Mack this week, Eddie Jackson this past week, Cody Whitehair this past week. So they would just do it with everybody. Maybe try to trade Kyle Fuller, maybe try to trade Akeem Hicks. They could do it, but again, no. Are you adding on top of that? Probably not. You say you're right. The receivers are cheap, so maybe you do go out and get a Fuller or a Curtis Samuel on a one-year flyer. But,
buddy, if you put Will Fuller, Russell Wilson, and Allen Robinson on the same field together, that would be
it would be perfect complements to each other. God
damn.
I'm back in.
I'm back in, baby. I mean,
but it's not even. It's to the degree. Like, I don't think we fully grasp how little Russ. The last time Russ played in the Super Bowl, none of his wide receivers active that day were drafted by an NFL team. Like, he has been very good at overcoming just immense amounts of crap. And I understand that if the Bears traded some of their players for him, he would be left with garbage. But is it any worse than what he has in Seattle?
No, and to your point, the division is a little worse. That's why, I mean, I guess you're not ripping up your Bears tickets quite yet.
No. The Bears tickets have value even if Russ doesn't go there, I think, because
the red rifle?
I mean,
just Rodgers' injury, and that's the door's
open?
open?
If Rodgers plays like he did in 2016, 17, 18, 2017, 18.
You're such a hater.
And 2019, and the Packers get a modicum of regression everywhere else, they're a 10-win team probably, right? And the Bears were an 8-win team last year, despite the fact that they actively started a quarterback for 6 games who refused to throw a hot pass. Trubisky last year was 6-3 as a start.
I mean, the Bears and the Broncos are in the same boat. They're massively talented, and I want to talk about the Broncos here. They're massively talented, top to bottom, and had arguably the worst quarterback situation in the league. And if they just got an average fucking quarterback, they'd be a really good team. If they got a good quarterback, they would be a great team. And that's why I'm here to overreact to Deshaun Watson liking a Jerry Jeudy photo on Instagram, which for us to be talking about is absolutely hilarious, because I was thinking about this. What if we all reacted to likes on Instagram in the same way? I like a photo of someone in Italy, and it's like, will George be moving to Italy tomorrow? I just like the photo of a steak. Will he be going to the steakhouse this evening? My girlfriend would be following me around asking what the hell I'm doing.
Denver, I mean, the issue with betting Denver division futures is that Kansas City is an overwhelming favorite to win that division, and there's two other good options at QB in that division, in Herbert and Carr. The win total over, though, I think absolutely has legs. And I know that's probably why they haven't hung the win totals up this year, because there's about 10 to 15% hold in those DraftKings. So even if you think you have value, if you just there's nowhere close to arbitrage opportunities in these markets. So that's why they're letting you make these longer term bets, because they're generally bad unless you truly have an edge. With win totals, actually, like they cause the book some exposure because the hold is substantially lower, 5% or so.
The reason why I love Denver as opposed to Chicago is even post-trade, they still have a talented roster. So look, you have Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton coming off an injury, KJ Hamler. Like,
do they have to give up one of those guys?
I'm saying probably give up on those guys. Give up number 9. If Houston wants Drew Lock, maybe. But still, I'm saying, and I think Bradley Chubb probably on the move there as well. But still, after, let's say you give up 2 of those guys and a bunch of picks, you're still you have the best offensive line in the division by a good margin still. There's still it's not a bad roster.
Yeah, if they can keep Jeudy, if you could give up Chubb, and I know they love Chubb, but I would, if you could give up Chubb and picks. I'm trying to think about Deshaun, where I want to see Deshaun Watson most. I think Carolina is 3rd on my list, honestly. I'm not sure the Smock deserves it at this point after what he's done in free agency. I'm gonna go with. Oh, this is really tough, man. Deshaun Watson in a Dolphins jersey to me just feels right. Yep. But the Broncos and that division would be absolutely insane. I'm going Broncos 1B, Dolphins 1A. What do you guys think?
I'm with you there for sure.
Driving the bandwagon?
Yep.
All right, let's make it happen. Let's close it out with this. Brad, you're our cap wizard. You've been here all week. You've been absolutely killing it. I want to know who gets, so far, the crown is doing the best cap gymnastics, handling the cap the best so far in free agency, and who is going to be put in the corner, who fucked themselves the most.
I love the Jets' approach with new GM Joe Douglas in that they came into the
Hang the banner.
Hang the banner. Well, another thing is the fact that we're not hanging the banner is why it's been great.
Yeah.
We are used to them giving out the biggest deals in free agency every single year. C.J. Mosley, 5-year, $85 million deal at off-ball linebacker. I think he's played 30 snaps as a Jet. Trumaine Johnson. Great locker room presence. Trumaine Johnson made him like the highest paid corner in the NFL at one moment. So only 2 signings so far. Carl Lawson, which we all loved, and Corey Davis was a fine, solid move for wide receiver 2. They still have the most cap space left in the NFL at this moment and upgraded the roster in a significant way. Worst cap management, the conversation starts and stops with the Saints. It just is. It's crazy. I'll take an L.
Even with the incredible void contract?
The management is next level. I literally thank you, Saints, for teaching me how to do all this because I just learned via watching Chahrouri, their capologist, go crazy with all these things. But, I didn't think they could franchise tag Marcus Williams. They go ahead and do that. They've made a billion moves. They have $30 million plus dead money on several 30-year-old players at this point. And again, Jason, you're betting on Jason. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Also, I'm coining Jason. I've been saying that all week. So.
I'm very interested to see what the Saints do. There's voodoo going on there somewhere. They're going to figure. I just foresee them somehow luck boxing themselves into a quarterback. I don't know why. This was a lot of fun. We will be back on Sunday at our regularly scheduled time. Won't be live. You won't be able to see my face live. Hopefully, I'm in better shape, Eric. People had noticed that perhaps I was under the weather on Sunday, but I'm not going to make excuses. I came to play. I don't want to grade myself on a curve.
No, absolutely not.
Also, for the people that asked, I don't have COVID. If you were curious, I did not have COVID. That was not my ailment. Thank you guys for hanging out. Free Agency 30 is the promo code, 30% off. Go get it. Check out all these guys' great content. Thanks for hanging out. Peace.